Tak, ukázka z hudby, vážení přátelé, byla stišena a já vás tady všechny hezky vítám. Ty naše čtvrtky tady obvykle zaměřujeme úplně na jiná témata. Je to spíš taková prostě konzervativně liberální politika, konzervativně liberální věda. Teď jsme trošku... in English, yes. So, good evening, everybody. It's in English, no Czech translation. So, let me welcome you all again here in English. Those Thursdays are usually dedicated to the various debates about the politics, mostly from the conservative and the liberal perspective, with the various scientists. But this time we had decided to change a little bit the format. Tomáš Pojar, who sent you his regrets because he is lecturing in Brno today and could not make it, but came with a proposal some time ago to use the opportunity that Joshua Faudem will be spending a week in Prague and presenting his documentary movie as well as a book, a comics. Paradoxically, we have started the discussion about this event well before November 13 Paris attack. But of course, in this current context, we are even more glad to have a chance to sit with an Israeli friend who has, I would say, a living experience. What does it mean to be the target of the suicide attack in a company which belongs to his friends? Jiří Cieslar, who is our professor of arts here at the school, will be the moderator, so I will leave the introduction of Joshua on him. But just let me repeat again, this is a special event which will mix an experience of somebody who is making a documentary movie with his friends who are owning a blues bar in Tel Aviv, in the seashore of this great and beautiful city. A blues bar, as you can read in this comics, is a place where under any circumstances you should not talk about the politics or religion. So, and suddenly the politics, suicidal politics and suicidal religions has entered the space just in the moment when Joshua and his friend were shooting the movie in the bar. They have lost some friends, but that's what I like on the Israelis. It's a different mentality than the Europeans. They even are able to take it seriously, contrary to many Europeans, but at the same time to take it also with a certain sense of the Jewish distance and humor. So, gentlemen, I will just sit and will listen to you, and I will pass the floor first to Jiří Cieslar and then to Joshua Faudem. And have a nice evening.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to present Joshua Faudem. He is a documentary filmmaker from Jerusalem, Israel, originally from the US. As he has written on his webpage, he produces films that expose or confront various aspects of the cultural friction in Israel and strategies which everyday people employ to deal with them. This sounds, of course, a bit general, but he will tell you more in a bit, though. Joshua has a close connection to the Czech Republic. He studied at FAMU. like film faculty in Prague, and he holds a bachelor degree from this department. As he told me, he doesn't speak Czech very well. That's why we try to speak in English. He's the creator of the documentary Blues by the Beach, and it all started as a documentary in 2003 about a blues music bar by the beach in Tel Aviv called Mike's Place. The story, however, was to face an unexpected change. Less than a month after they began filming, Mike's Place was the target of a deadly suicide bombing. Joshua and the film's producer, Jack Baxter, and the Mike's Place family survived the only way they know how, by keeping the camera rolling. And you will see an excerpt of the movie in a moment. But moreover, a decade later, Joshua, together with Jack, got back to the story of Mike's Place, and together with Israeli artist Koren Shadmi, I hope I say it correctly, they are telling the tale of this Middle Eastern gem in graphic novel form. That's Mike's Place, the comic book, and it was published, I think, during the summer this year, and recently it was also published in a Czech edition. You can buy this book in front, and I think I will give the floor to Joshua, but two more things. At the end, of course, there will be space for discussion. And at the very end, we invite you for a glass of wine in our student bar called the Submarine. You will see when you come there why we call it like this. And I have to thank, wine was provided by Víno Javornický, like the Spielberg wine, for which we offer them many thanks. Joshua, the floor is yours.
Okay, good. Oh. Good evening. I'm going to bring the microphone down just a little. Okay. So, thank you for having me here, both of you. Roman, Jitka. Thanks for everything, for organizing everything. I'm going to talk to you in one condition, that you guys give me good questions after, because this is all about not just me standing here and talking, but about your thoughts and your questions. I'm going to present to you the film that I did, explain to you how I made it, explain to you how I got to the format of a graphic novel 10 years after, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about the actual bombing at Mike's Place and the perpetrators of this attack, just so that you know the attackers were not Palestinians. They were British citizens who belonged to the Finsbury Mosque in London, which the Finsbury Mosque was a hornet's nest of incitement, extremism in London. The shoe bomber came from there. Three hijackers from 9/11 were from there. And it was a big place that was very dangerous, But basically, I'm going to talk a little bit about my background. I was born in Detroit, in Michigan, in a family. I'm the youngest of 4 children. Family, very rooted in the United States. I'm third generation. Born in the States. Actually, my grandfather was actually in the Jewish mafia in New York in the 20s and 30s. Yeah, bootlegging and gambling, stuff like this. He was the generation before Meyer Lansky and Bugsy Siegel. He was older than them. So I definitely have my roots in the United States. But when I was 8, my family immigrated to Israel. And I grew up in Jerusalem. And growing up in Jerusalem, for those of you who have not been to Jerusalem, Jerusalem is, for me, the most special place on earth. It's complicated, it's complex, it's depressing, it's beautiful, it's amazing, it's everything all together. And when you grow up in a city like that, which is so complicated and so diverse, it opens up your mind, and it should open up your mind, and that's what it did to me. And I grew up in the hype of the first Intifada from 87 to 92, I believe, or 91, understanding the conflict and living it too, and living it. Even though I was too young at the time to go into the army, I understood it. I understood that there is big troubles, and these troubles need to be solved. Can they be solved? Will they be solved? I don't know. But you grow up understanding the core of the conflict, and as a person, as an artist, as a person, it has a huge, and always had a huge impact on me. I went into the army in Israel, like everybody does, from the age of 18 to 21. And I was in an airborne unit, a paratrooper, and I served in Gaza, Lebanon, the West Bank, and I was a radio operator for my officer, which meant that I ran all the time. And that's all I remember doing in the army, was running. So, and as I got out of the army, I always knew that I wanted to do film. And spending 3 years in the army, you have tons of time to think about what you want to do in your career, what you want to do, what you want to study. So it was very clear to me when I got out of the army what I want to do. And I will just say a little bit something about studying here in Prague and studying at FAMU, is that when I was 16 years old, we have a place in Jerusalem called the Cinematheque. And it's kind of like Kino Ero or Kino Oko, like these art house kind of. And I remember seeing a movie there called Ucho by Karol Kachina, and completely opened my mind to Czech literature, to Czech cinema. I grew up in a house where we saw a lot of Alfred Hitchcock films, and this film for me like blew Alfred Hitchcock out of the water, and like I was, and that's when I can recall my kind of romance with the Czech Republic, with Czechoslovakia or whatever, kind of started. After I finished my studies in Prague, I moved back to Israel. The hype of the second Intifada is in full swing. I left Israel in 1997, so Netanyahu was still in power. Barak came after him, and then when I came back, Sharon was already in full swing. In his what we call in Israel, we say Sharon's second wind, because after Sabra and Shatila, people said that he would never come back, and he did, big time. And I come back to an Israel that's really not foreign to me, but things are really bad. Like bombs, buses are blowing up, cafes are blowing up. My parents, who live in Jerusalem, in the northern part of Jerusalem, which is very close to Ramallah, helicopters always in the sky, Cobra helicopters, and it's just like, it's a very bad time. And I decide to come back to Israel and to restart and to start my film career. And of course, like many artists, I find myself working in a bar, which makes perfect sense, because the artist needs to suffer a lot, and it's like the Via Dolorosa, you got to suffer. Luckily, I was suffering in a bar, with some beer pipes, and my best friends who are running the bar, they're old friends of mine from Jerusalem. Mike's Place used to be a bar in Jerusalem. I would say it was probably the size of the stage. Very smoky, blues, guitar, always live music. The owner of Mike's Place was a guy named Mike, who was a Canadian photojournalist who was in Sarajevo in the beginning of the 90s and got really crazy. And he decided the best thing for him to do is to move to Jerusalem and open up a bar. That's going to be good therapy for him. So it was a very wild bar, very small. I used to, in Israel, I think kind of like here, it's like there is a drinking age, but it's not enforced. And Israelis don't really abuse It's not like in America where, like, you know, alcohol is really abused. So Israelis, you know, Israelis think they know how to drink, but they don't really know how to drink. But they like to think that they do. So this is a bar that everybody's hanging out in, and it's really multicultural, and there's a lot of journalists there and a lot of... but I'm going forward to 2003 when I come back to Israel, and I am trying to figure out what to do with my life. You know, school's done, the honeymoon's over. You know, like being a student, and you know, you have this kind of aura of protection. You know, I'm a student, and now you're not a student, and now it's life, and now it's rent, and you got to start your career. And I'm walking on the beach in Tel Aviv, and I see Mike's place, and I'm like, that's interesting. I should walk in. Maybe I know somebody, you know. And I walk in, and I see an old friend of mine named Gal Gansman, who is actually even at my bar mitzvah. That's how long I know him. And he's like, hey, and I haven't seen him 10 years. I would say definitely 10 years. And then another friend's there, and his brother Asaf is the co-owner with him, who I know also. And to make a long story short, I walk out of the bar with a job and an apartment, because I was also looking for a flat. And I was like, okay, this is what I got to do now. I got to pour beers, and slowly I'll start my film career. And I was actually working on a film at the time that I had got a grant from the Israeli Film Society. And I'm starting to work in the bar. And I think I'm there about 3-4 months. And one morning I walk into the bar, which was always, you know, like the flies and the smell of the beer, you know, and it's like the cook didn't clean up well and this. And I come into the bar, and Gal, the owner, he's like, Joshua, I need to talk to you. And I was like, okay, I'm getting fired already. And he starts telling me that last night, because I wasn't working the night before, an American journalist, investigative journalist, he didn't say investigative journalist, came into the bar, and him and Gal decided that him and I are going to make a film about Mike's Place. And I'm like, why? And he's like, well, you know, and then Gal's like, well, you know what, wait a minute, he's going to be here in like a few minutes. And there comes this guy, Jack Baxter, classic New York, Bronx, likes to say that he's liberal, but he's not really liberal, and like this and like that. And he's like, you know, he reads the Post, but he reads like 5 different newspapers a day, you know, and he came to Israel to do a film about Marwan Barghouti. Does anybody know who Marwan Barghouti is? He was, at the time, he was one of Arafat's kind of protege, like he was protege, yeah, he was definitely protege. For a while, he was very, very committed to the peace process, and the Israelis kind of focused on him, and then the Second Intifada broke out, and he went completely the opposite, and he masterminded, I think, 34 suicide bombings, and pretty serious ones. And he was on trial in Israel. He's still in prison. And Jack wanted to make a documentary about him because Jack thought that this guy could be the future leader of the Palestinians, blah, 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 blah. And he comes to Israel, and he realizes that 3 people are already doing a documentary about him. And Jack's like, okay, I'm going to go home. No, whatever, you know. And he changes his ticket, and he books the flight for the next day, and that's the night. His last night, he came to the bar. He heard music on the beachfront, and he came into Mike's Place, and him and Gal met. And I think after a few drinks, they decided that they're going to make a movie. And Gal says to him, you know what? One of my bartenders just finished school. He always would say Czechoslovakia, and I'd be like, it's not Czechoslovakia, it's the Czech Republic. Whatever. You know what I'm talking about. And I'd be like, okay. But he actually had a very interesting concept, Jack. And I really liked his concept. And his concept was, Joshua, on the news, you don't see places like Mike's Place. And I want to show that. And I was like, I'm in. If that's your goal, if that's your angle, let's do it. And we decide, and Gal gave me like 10 days off. And I decided, him and I decided that we would start filming and we would interview some of the workers. We have a cook in the kitchen who's an Arab from the Galilee. We have another cook who's an ex-SAS soldier from Britain who's like been all over the place. We have a British bartender, a Canadian bartender. We have a French waitress. Me, Gal. We have the regulars. We have Scottish people. We have diplomats. We have everything is in this bar, and we have great music, very good music. And the idea is to really show another side of my society through music, through the beer kegs, through the personal stories, and to stay away from the politics. And outside, the region is on fire. I also will remind you that this is exactly when the Iraq War is taking place. Okay, Saddam Hussein. I remember like the statues coming down and like all these things on the news. Colin Powell, blah blah blah. Bush standing on the aircraft. Mission completed. This is all the same kind of time. And also, Israel and the Palestinians are committed to the roadmap, which was presented by President Bush to Mahmoud Abbas and to Ariel Sharon. This is all going on at the same time. And this is actually in the book. We really give you in the book that kind of political background, but we don't get into it, but it's there. You see it on the TV, you're feeling what's going on around. And Jack and I start making this film, and we're really focusing on a few characters, and one of them is Dominique, who is the French waitress, who basically runs the bar. Without her, nothing happens, because Gal is, this and that, and she is like, you're scared of her, not of Gal. When Gal has to fire somebody, he'll see like, Dominique, can you fire Louis the chef, because I don't know, and she'd be like, And we have all these other characters, and we're focusing on them. And of course, there's Avi, who's the security guard, who is black belt in something, officer in the Givati regiment in Israel. Pretty serious guy. You definitely do not want to bump into him in a dark alley. But a very sweet guy, and he's the bouncer. And Jack and I are focusing on all these people, and we're doing interviews with everybody. Why did you come to Israel? How did you get to Israel? The British Sikh guy is like, he fell in love with an Israeli in Thailand, and Louis, the chef from the Galilee, ran away from his parents because they want him to get married to a woman that he doesn't want to get married to. So he's in Tel Aviv, living life and working as a chef, as a cook. A lot of different characters. On April 30th, April 29th, we decide that we're finished, and Jack is going to go back to the United States, and he is going to take all the material and edit something and pitch it to, I think it was, I can't remember, CBS or NBC or Fox. I can't remember where he had his contacts, but he had some contacts, and I was like, whatever. This is your footage. You paid for it. He actually even paid me. This was like the first job that I had after school, actually. I remember Jack saying, I got $1,000. That's all I have. Here, take it. And I was like, well, don't you want a receipt or something? He's like, receipt, it's all done very casually. So he decides that he's leaving. And the night before he leaves, we're all at Mike's place, saying goodbye to him. And a little bit after midnight, 2 suicide bombers come up to the door, to Avi, to the bouncer, and they try to get in. One of them, there's one standing in the back, far away, who's going to ignite himself after the ambulances come and the police. It's like a double suicide. It's a tactic, which has unfortunately been very successful for them at that time. And He detonates himself right outside of the bar because the security guard, Avi, did not let him in. And basically, 3 people die immediately, including Dominique. Jack he actually jokes about it. He says, that's the only time in my life that I was actually thrown into a bar. It's true. He was blown into the bar through the glass. Total mayhem. I immediately knew what was happening, and my camera was on the bar. It's like these little things that you remember. I remember exactly what beer I was drinking. I was drinking a Weinstefan, a third, and I only took 1 sip out of it. I like these little things that you remember. And all I remember is Gal, who was behind the bar, with a gun out, hopping over the bar, and my eyes are just following him, and I see the whole scene, the layout of the aftermath of the bombing. And I see Jack lying down with his eyes open, mouth open, blood coming out of his ears, and I think maybe even his nose. And I didn't even approach him. I thought he was dead. So I approached Avi, who was the security guard, who unfortunately, he survived. Crazy that he survived, but he did. And I started checking him for a pulse. And he had a very, very weak pulse. I could only, up here was a mess. So I had to get his leg and find his pulse. And we started giving him CPR and, the whole thing. And then the police came. And I run back into the bar, and I pick up my camera, and I cross the street, and I keep on filming. And right now I'm going to show you guys the trailer of the documentary that I did, which is called Blues by the Beach. I finished it in 2006. So it took 2.5 years to make this film, with a lot of breaks, a lot of emotional breaks, also financial breaks. But I'm going to share this with you, and then I'm going to talk about how I got to the book and why I got to the book. So just hold on.
My name is Jack Baxter. I'm a filmmaker and freelance journalist from New York City. Even though I'm not a Jew or a Muslim, I wanted to go to the Middle East and find a story to tell. I'd found a story and had a reason to go over there. A bar called Mike's Place.
Yeah, it's good to see you all having a good time. That's right.
I looked around and saw Israelis and Arabs and Europeans and Americans listening and dancing to the music. This is a Middle East I didn't know existed, and it fascinated me.
We have a cardinal rule at Mike's Place, which is we try to keep the atmosphere English-speaking.
Everybody speaks English. It's like a really cheap flight to a bar in the States. It's more of an Anglo scene.
I do it for the smile on the face. You know, when you make a difference to someone's day, people think, yeah, I feel part of this family. My father calls me, what's the mood like in Israel? I don't know. Went to a bar yesterday, got drunk, went dancing on Thursday night.
שלום לכם, אנחנו בשידור מיוחד, פיגוע הלילה בתל אביב, לפני כשעה, סמוך לשעה 1 בלילה.
How can they do this? They know that they're going to kill people. How can they do this?
I can tell you, there is nothing in the Quran that states to kill people, to commit suicide and take somebody out. Nothing in there.
Little boy, don't cry.
that's what happened. That's what came out of, I call it Jack's adventures to the Holy Land, you know, like this is the film. And it took, I mean, it took a very heavy toll editing this and working on it. You know, it took 2-3 years to make. And I really, you know, everybody was like, oh, you know, you'll find your closure and you'll make this film. And it was the exact opposite. It opened up Pandora's box to a lot of psychological stuff, insomnia, PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. I'm your poster boy for these symptoms. But these symptoms take time for it to set in. You know, it's not like the bomb goes off and you go straight to the psychologist. It takes time. And in my case, it took 2 years until I realized that I'm dealing with these issues, and I went into therapy. And part of my therapy, and it got to a point where 2005, 2006, 2007, I'm traveling all around lecturing with the film. Film festivals, Cannes, Berlin, I think even Jihlava. I think I did a screening in Jihlava. I'm not quite sure. And at some point, it's like I told Jack that I can't do this anymore, and he was like, I understand, and I stopped. And I'm in therapy, not sleeping, work. It affects work, it affects life, it affects your relationship with your girlfriend, it reflects your everything. It influences everything, your work, your art, you know. I didn't direct a film for many years after this because there was something in me that was just not there anymore, you know, and you have to get this back. So one of the psychiatrists that I worked with was a woman, a very lovely woman named Valerie, who's a South African woman. When I worked with her, she was already 82, 83. So she's like a real professional wisdom, you know, she was a good match for me. She really, and I would always tell her how the film, it's true what happened, and it's, you know, there's no manipulation here, there's no like, but there's so many other things that happened. There's so many other aspects, and the bombers, and this, and London, and here, and her and I, she would tell me to write down things, write it down. And this went on for, I'd say, a year or two. And then I was in New York visiting Jack, who, by the way, till today, he walks with a cane. He's physically, I mean, you see it on him that he's messed up. Physically, he's very messed up. We always joke that he's physically messed up and I'm emotionally messed up, and we're like a tag team, you know. We're like we could explain everything here. And basically, Jack, being an investigative journalist, has always been really obsessed with the bombers of Mike's Place, because, like I said, they were not Palestinians, they were British. And how did they get to Israel? And they came under the cover of the International Red Cross as aid workers. But when I'm in New York visiting Jack and I decide to do some writing. We decide to write the story of Mike's Place, to rewrite it, to write it in a proper way of a script, of a fictional feature film. And we really did this for ourselves. You know, we really did it for ourselves, and it took a year. And it was a really interesting process. And what we did is we rewrote the story of Mike's Place, and we told the story through 3 love stories that are happening at the bar at the same time, and how each love story is affected by the bombing in a different way. One love story crashes. The couple doesn't pass the test of being together and being strong, and that was me and my girlfriend. The other relationship is Gal and Dominique. They had a thing, and she died in his arms, literally in front of us. And the third love story is Jack and his wife, who came and got on a plane. She's never been to Israel. She's actually Jewish, never been to Israel, doesn't really know anything about Judaism, or one of those, you know, I don't know how to say it, New York Jews or something, or like very disconnected from Judaism. And all of a sudden she is in Israel for the first time in her life, and her husband is in a coma, and she is just like, and this event really pulled their relationship together. Like it really, Jack says, again, he has these great quotes. He said, he always told me that surviving a suicide bombing it was the best cure for his midlife crisis. Puts everything in perspective. And I was like, okay. And basically, we wrote this script, and it sat on my shelf and on Jack's shelf for about 1.5 years until I met an old friend of mine who owns a graphic novel company called First Second Books in New York, and his company was bought by Macmillan, by the publishing house Macmillan, and basically this guy and I, Mark Siegel, went out for dinner, and as we were walking back to the subway, and I was going into the subway, he said to me, Joshua, I meant to ask you, can I see Blues by the Beach, your documentary about Mike's Place? My mother saw it, and I know his parents, and I was like, yeah, absolutely. I sent him the next day, I sent him a copy of the film, of the trailer that you guys just saw. A week later, email from him, maybe like, I don't know, it would have taken me maybe like 4 days to write this email that he wrote me. But what he did is he's a writer, he's an illustrator, he's an editor, and he basically analyzed the whole film almost scene by scene. And I called him back. And I said to him, listen, I just read what your email, and I want to talk to you about it. And he was like, listen, you know, blah, 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 blah. And then as the conversation's getting to the end, he says to me, Joshua, how are you? How are you doing? Like, how are you psychologically? And I was like, well, you know, da-da-da, da-da-da. And then he's like, how is Jack? And he's like, I'm like, Jack is okay, you know. We actually wrote a script. And he was like, can I read it? And I was like, yeah. So I sent it to him. And that's how the book happened. It wasn't like I woke up one day and I was like, you know what, I'm going to write a book about what really happened to me at Mike's Place. It wasn't like that at all. It really, like, it was one thing leading to another. And what I can tell you about the book, and I'm going to show you the book trailer very, very soon, the book gave me personally a lot of closure. It gave me a little bit of peace. I won't say a lot of peace, but it definitely a little bit more than... It was therapy. It was definitely no psychiatrist could do what this process did for me. Jack looked at it in a completely different perspective, and I think that was what was good in us writing. Also in the book, so we explore the love stories, and we also focus on the bombers, their characters. And we chose them to be characters because they're part of the story. They open the book and they end the book. And they are immediately, from when you start reading the book, the ticking bomb is on immediately. And you know that there's going to be a bomb. It's not a surprise. And many years later, after Mike's Place, well, I'll get to that in a sec, but I'm going to show you the trailer of the book. It was illustrated by an Israeli illustrator named Koren Shadmi, who is a very, very special guy, great artist. He taught me a lot about this because I've never done this. I probably will never do it again. And, you know, he's got 3, 4, 5 books under his belt already. It was a very interesting experience, especially when it's autobiography. But I'm going to show you guys the trailer.
came to Israel at the height of the Second Intifada to try and make a documentary about a charismatic Palestinian leader on trial. Got scooped on the story and figured I'd just go back home to New York. That night, I walked into a live music blues bar on the Tel Aviv beachfront. The owner said if I did a film about his bar, it could show another side of the Middle East. A Middle East where Israelis, Arabs, Europeans, and Americans all get along. I was convinced. My director and I interviewed the bartenders, waitresses, and musicians. We thought we had the perfect story. Then one night, everything changed.
Trailer of the book. The book has 999 illustrations. It took a year and a half to write. It took a year and a half to illustrate. I'm going to tell you one little thing about the process of writing the book. And then I want to talk a little bit about the political background with the bombers of Mike's Place and the connection to the 7/7 bombings in London 2.5 years after. But when we finished writing the book, Mark Siegel, who is the editor, called me. I was living at the time in Denver in Colorado. And he said to me, I think we need to put chapters into the book. And I was like, why? The book is really a quick read. I mean, you can finish it literally in an hour and a half. If you're stuck somewhere on a train, or it's a perfect book. You're done, hour and a half, maybe 2 hours. And I said, why do this? Why put chapters in the book? Why distract the flow of the read? And he was like, well, I'm thinking that we need to do this. And we got into a little bit of an argument, a debate. And he said to me, think it over for the weekend and let's speak on Monday. So I called Jack, and Jack immediately is like, what? And him and I are like, no, we're not doing this. We're not. Why? And then after we were yelling, not at each other, we're united again. We're united in our decision not to do these chapters. And basically, can I just have the book? The book has 6 chapters that each chapter starts with a quotation from the Quran. Okay? And these are quotes from the Quran that talk about Muslims respecting other people's religions and beliefs. Okay? And every time you turn the page, well, not this one, but here, you're always with the terrorists, with the bombers. So basically, they're doing the exact opposite of what it says in the quotations of the Quran. And this is one of the messages of the book that Jack and I, honestly, I mean, we did come up with it, and it was our idea, but we were pushed by the editor, who had no idea that we were going to go down that avenue. And basically, when we came back to him with this idea, he says, now we can go into print. You're telling a story, and you're saying something. Yallah, let's go. And the book went into print like a few days later. And these are, for me, one of the most important parts of the book are the quotations from the Quran, because I don't have a problem with Islam. I have a problem with extremists in any religion. Extremism is just something that I have a very difficult thing with. And I think it was important for us to use these quotations so that people understand that the people who are writing this book, we're not angry with Muslims. We don't have, there's a lot of good things in Islam, and we're putting them in our book. It's a mission for us to set the record straight that Jack and I are not. We don't have any issues with the religion. We have issues with extremists who interpretate what they want and how they want it and this and that. So this was something that really wasn't planned, and it happened really at the last moment before the book went into print. And I think that's, those are very interesting aspects. The last thing that I'm going to talk about before I answer questions is the connection between the bomb. Okay, it's about the bombers. The bombers that perpetrated the Mike's Place bombing, as I told you, were from London. They were born in England from parents who were born in Pakistan. And they went to this mosque, the Finsbury Mosque, and in the Finsbury Mosque was a guy named Muhammad Sadiq Khan. Muhammad Sadiq Khan is the guy who masterminded the bombings in London in 7/7. Do you guys remember the bombings in London in the Tube? He masterminded those bombings. But before he masterminded those bombings, he recruited his two friends. He planned the Mike's Place attack. And basically what happened was he came to Israel. And this is how the book starts, and this is a fact. Muhammad Sadiq Khan came to Israel on February 19th. The Mike's Place bombing was April 30th. He came to Israel on February 19th for 1 day. How could that be? And he came, and he found Mike's Place, saw that it was next to the American embassy. Perfect. Went back to London, recruited Hanif and Asif, his two friends, who actually did the bombing. And after the bombing, and this is also in the book, and also it's not in the film because I couldn't film this. A lot of things are in the book that are not in the film. 3 days after the bombing, I get a phone call from the Israeli FBI, Shabak. Well, of course, they didn't say they were Shabak, but, it wasn't. They didn't have business cards. And they asked me if I would come with the footage that I shot. If I would come to the closest police station, they would pick me up. They picked me up actually, and they're like, "We want to go over your material. Maybe you filmed the bombers, maybe." And I was like, "Absolutely." So I go in there. I spent the whole day with them, going over the tapes and everything, and this and that, and they said, okay, there was nothing there in the footage that they thought that was useful to them. And they said to me, in a few days, I can't remember, MI5 or MI6? MI5 is the international, right? Like the CIA, MI5. So MI5, and again, they didn't say MI5. They said gentlemen from the British Secret Service or whatever are going to contact you. Please cooperate with them. It's their investigation. Like, this is their problem. And I remember one of the Shabaka guys saying to me, now they're going to, I hope now they will wake up. And I was like, of course, like, absolutely. I never got the phone call. They never called me. They never called the other people that they were supposed to interview. They never came. Nothing. So in the book, we discuss this. We talk about it. And at the end of the book, we say if they would have taken their investigation a little bit more serious, maybe they would have gotten onto Muhammad Sadiq Khan, who blew himself up with 4 other people, killed, I think, 61 people, I think, in the London bombings. Maybe it could have been prevented, maybe. And what I'm going to show you right now, Sky News did an article in July when it was the 10th-year anniversary. They used a little bit of the book, but they talk about Muhammad Sadiq Khan and the Mike's Place bombing and how come the British never did anything. So I think this is a very interesting note, since this is a house of political science and politics. I think it would be interesting to end up on this note, and then it's all about you guys asking me questions. So I'm going to play this piece from Sky News.
struck. Years before the 7/7 attacks, Britain's first suicide bombers struck. Tel Aviv, April 2003, 3 dead and more than 50 injured. The attack carried out by 2 men from Hounslow and Derby. Now, for the first time, questions are being asked about whether apparent links between this attack in Tel Aviv and the July 7th London bombings have ever been properly investigated. Lead 7/7 bomber Mohammed Sadiq Khan had been on the surveillance radar from as early as 2001. But an inquest into the London attacks found British intelligence and police could not have reasonably been expected to have identified him as an imminent threat. Yet a potentially crucial fact was missing from the inquest's deliberations, one confirmed by senior Israeli security officials.
Because it's all been said before by far more.
Mohammed Sadiq Khan had visited Israel for a single day in February 2003, just weeks before the Mike's Place attack. The timing has never been accounted for in any of the public investigations into his background. The Tel Aviv bombers were Asif Hanif and Omar Sharif, 2 British citizens who had travelled to Israel after visiting Syria and Jordan. Hanif's device detonated, Sharif's failed. He was found drowned on the beach weeks later.
Who's Tony Blair, George Bush?
Like Mohammed Sadiq Khan, the Tel Aviv bombers were involved in the UK activities of the now banned Al-Muhajiroun group. It is believed Sharif and Khan may have visited the same mosque in Beeston over a number of years, and a BBC documentary in 2006 went further still, suggesting that Khan, Omar Sharif and Asif Hanif had together approached a businessman in Manchester in 2001, attempting to persuade him to fund a project to send young Muslims for education in Syria and Afghanistan.
How can this guy walk in and out of Israel?
Ever since 7/7, Joshua Faudem has been asking whether more could have been done to investigate the background of the Mike's Place bombers. He was working as a barman when the bombing took place, but was also filming a documentary about the bar itself. The footage was of understandable interest to the authorities. In his recently published graphic novel about the attacks, he recounts an interview with Israeli intelligence.
Before they sent me off, they said the British Secret Service are going to be getting in contact with you in the next few days because they want to interview you and they want to see your tapes. Please cooperate with them. And I said to them, absolutely. They had my details and they said that they passed it on, and I never, ever heard from them.
After 7/7, Israeli authorities looked into whether Khan's visit to Israel was part of the planning for the Mike's Place attacks. They've since said there were no findings to corroborate this. But was it really just a tourist trip? Analysts speculate Khan's use of Allenby crossing with Jordan may have been to scout the security at the crossing itself. Why? Because they believe the Mike's Place bombers used this crossing to smuggle in explosives they picked up in Syria.
Most, 95, even more than that, of the explosive charges that were used in the suicide attacks and other terror attacks were based on improvised explosives. And here we are finding something professional, prepared very well.
Barak Ben-Zur once held a senior position in the Shin Bet, Israel's equivalent of MI5. He says Hamas had no need for foreigners to carry out suicide attacks at that time, and that he's surprised more questions have not been asked about why Khan visited Israel.
There are a variety of other cases that the rebels deal with very deeply and very, let's say, seriously. But this special case was omitted. I don't know what is the reason for that.
The government's official account of 7/7 said there was no evidence of anything suspicious about Khan's visit to Israel. However, there is a crucial omission from this report. At no point does it record anything about the Mike's Place attacks. Indeed, in its timeline of global acts of terror, Britain's first ever suicide bombers do not feature at all. The lawyer who represented the majority of the victims' families during the 7/7 inquests has told Sky News he would have asked her to look at the Israel trip had his team been aware of it. Now, the chairman of the Home Affairs Select Committee says further action should be taken.
It is relevant because the relatives of the victims of 7/7 believe it is relevant, and since it was not in the original timeline, it does need to be considered.
It seems the question of whether there were links between Mohammed Sadiq Khan and the Tel Aviv bombing has not even been asked, let alone answered. Tom Rayner, Sky News, Jerusalem.
So, definitely a lot of questions on this topic, and it was something that definitely Jack and I, when we wrote the book, knew that we wanted to address. Maybe in hope to get an answer. But as you saw in this article, you know, who knows? So, so that's about it. And actually, and the book came out in July, in June, and this gentleman here, Roman, is the publisher of the book in Czech, and also there is a version in French, which is actually very funny because the French didn't want to use this cover. So they used this. Hold on. This is crazy. They used, can you find it? If you could just Google for me the French Mike's Place cover. The French, ironic as it is, did not want to, the publisher explained to us that they didn't want to hurt anybody's feelings by using this cover in cover, French cover. Yeah, okay. No, it's okay. It's okay. Let's see what the photos are. No, go down. So they find it, but basically they didn't want to offend anybody, so they made a cover that that I think we call it the Scooby-Doo version. You know Scooby-Doo the cartoon? There you go. It's like, what? Hello. And they're allowed to. Every publisher knows his market and this and that. And it's a very different message from, you know, from this. And you have this. It's like teenagers on summer break or something like that. And things get a little wild, you know. It's like, but it is what it is. I'm very glad that you, Roman, that you didn't even think about, it was never, and when I told you, you couldn't believe it. But anyways, I want to put the microphone in your hands, and I'm glad to answer any questions. So please, if there's Sasha.
Why did they select the Mike's Place, the bar? Was there a special reason for that?
Well, when the police raided their hostel, they were staying in a hostel on Hayarkon Street, which is very close to Mike's Place, and they found in the hostel, very openly, their passports, everything. They were not hiding anything, and there was a Lonely Planet book opened on Mike's Place. I think they selected it because it was next to the American Embassy, sending a message here. I mean, wall to wall. Mike's Place is wall to wall next to the American Embassy. Also, it was the night that the roadmap was signed. But I think they picked Mike's Place because Mike's Place was the only place in Tel Aviv at that time of the Intifada that was packed, that was still, you know, it was alive. And I think they knew that, and that's why they targeted it. I definitely think so. But they picked it very carefully, and they made sure that the police knew that they picked it very carefully while leaving everything out on the beds and everything. They were not hiding anything. Yeah. No. Okay. Sorry. No. I no. He doesn't have a question. Please.
The American Secret Services did them.
I didn't hear the first part of your question. I'm so sorry.
Don't you think it's strange that American Secret Services didn't
Listen, to be honest with you, the American embassy has cameras all over there. And never have we, I asked some people that work there, and they were like, immediately, I don't know. You know, it's like, and these people, just to let you know, the day of the bombing, I was working at the bar during the day shift, what we call the graveyard shift, you know, because not a lot of work. And they came in to have a beer at around 5 o'clock. The two bombers, they came in, and they had, again, I remember they drank 2 Stellas, and I remember one of them had drum rolling tobacco. Like it's these things that you remember that are really, and they had a beer, and it was happy hour, so the place was a little bit more busy, and I think they just wanted to go there for us to maybe to see their faces, so that when they come back in the evening, maybe. But they were there that day, and I actually testified in federal court about a year ago. Is anybody familiar with the Arab Bank lawsuit? That the Arab Bank was funneling money to the families of the suicide bombers. Have you? No? Big lawsuit. I testified in this court case because I actually saw them that day, and it's a law. I'm not going to get into the lawsuit, but it's 24 different attacks against the Arab Bank, which was giving money to the suicide families, to the families of the suicide bombers, and giving them letters of recognition, like thank you for what your son did, you know, and here's $30,000. Very interesting. But please, let's.
Well, there are 2 Arab characters in your graphic novel.
Yeah.
One of the terrorists died when he used his vest, but the other one did not and disappeared. And I read that his body was found 10 days after. He was killed by somebody, but no one knows who did it. And it brings me, like, there is maybe a link with what happened in Paris, because French police, or not only French police, are still seeking for this guy. And I also read that maybe he's not afraid of the police only, but also his brothers, because maybe they want to kill him because he didn't finish his mission. Yeah, that's how it works.
What do you mean that's how it works?
Like, I mean, if you fail,
listen, if you're a suicide bomber and you come back alive, that's not good for your resume. You know, that's like it doesn't work like that. You know, and it's very interesting because in the book, nobody knows what happened to the second bomber. Okay, in Mike's place. What we do know is that he dropped his belt. He dropped his bomb belt and he ran. When the police got to the belt, they realized that he didn't even try to ignite it. So it wasn't like he tried to blow himself up. It didn't work. He tried again, and he dropped it and he ran. I think that he saw what his friend did, and he had second thoughts. That's what I think. And in the book, that's where we go, because we explore what happens to Asif, to him. And nobody knows for sure what happened to him. All we know is that he was found floating in the Tel Aviv port with no signs of violent, like he wasn't beaten up or anything like that. And they found his clothes folded on the beach. His clothes, yeah. No, he took off his clothes and went into the ocean. They found his clothes folded. They found the body 10 days after. Yeah, the body came up in the port of Tel Aviv, you know, like, I think, yeah. But they found his clothes folded, his shoes, like. So in the book, we deal with this because nobody knows. If the Israelis would have caught him, they wouldn't have killed him. And if they would have killed him, they wouldn't have put him in the ocean. I mean, and, you know, I think, and what we try to explore in the book, is that this guy had second thoughts, and he came to a point where he was running and hiding from the police for the week and a half in Tel Aviv, coming to a point of remorse. I would like to think that. I don't know. I would like to think that. And this is the only part of the book where Jack and I really went into our imagination or whatever, but we tried to bring, and he decides that he's not going to come back from a suicide mission alive, and he takes his own life. He sees his family was arrested in London. His sister and his brother and his wife were all arrested because he wrote them emails saying that he's going to do what he's going to do, and they didn't report it. So they were immediately arrested. And that's kind of an avenue where we go down in the book with the second bomber.
Yeah, I was very surprised by those quotations from Quran.
From Quran.
And you mentioned that you do not believe that the Quran is so-called spring of evil or spring from everything bad is coming, that the problem is only to the extremists.
I can't hear you, but because I think the microphone is
surprised by those quotations from Quran. You mentioned that you don't believe that the Quran is so-called a spring of evil, spring where from everything bad is coming, and that the problems are only the extremists. It's surprising, especially now after the Paris, especially now in Czech Republic, where there is a strong discussion where all the bad is coming from, and there is a strong movement saying, well, everything bad is based on Quran. Where your opinion is coming from?
Okay.
Why really? It's surprising. It's surprising to find the parts of Quran in book, which is describing such strong story.
Sure.
Yeah,
that's a very good question. I would definitely would like to address the issue of where my opinions are coming from, and how, and also I think maybe I can also address, it's like I will address that in a sec, but at times like this, when we had this huge crisis of refugees, where is the Arab League? The Arab League, where are they? Where are they? I mean, these are their people. Where the hell are they? It's like, I don't understand. I really don't understand. And I'm not making a political statement here. I'm just asking, where are they? I just don't understand it. I also want to tell you just a little quick story. In 1978, after Menachem Begin became Prime Minister of Israel, at the Gulf of Eilat came 3 boats with, I think, 3,000 Vietnamese refugees who ran away from Saigon after the Americans pulled the plug. And they were called the boat people. A lot of refugees, a lot in Thailand, and the Prime Minister of Israel at the time, Menachem Begin, said to them, I'm not going to give you political asylum, I'm going to give you citizenships. Because 30 years ago, we were in the same situation, and that's a story that not a lot of people know about. And I think, I search in this time, where are these kind of politicians, or what's going on? How come? It again brings me back to, if there is an Arab League, what is it for? And why isn't it dealing with these refugees who honestly, my heart does go out. There are 4 million refugees. Anyways, that's one thing. But to your question about the quotations of the Quran and where is my opinion coming from, I never hide or hid my political views. I don't belong to any party. I grew up in a house where my parents were always like, my parents voted for Reagan in the 80s and they voted for Clinton in the 90s. They're not like Democrats or Republicans. And I grew up in a house where, politics is, it's like in America, I have one way of thinking, and in Israel, completely different. And it's not because I'm a right or a left or whatever, but in Israel, I definitely belong more and identify more with the left, but never lose my head. You can't lose your head in the Middle East. You can't be in La La Land and kumbaya, because there is no kumbaya in the Middle East, and it probably will never really happen. But for me, it was very important to try and make people understand that, especially at times like this, when what happened in Paris, and what happened in Paris in January, in Charlie Hebdo. I hate to say this, but the French made their own bed. You know, it's like your heart goes out, but are you surprised? No, I'm not surprised. You know, but I think at times like this, it's needed for people to know, and this is mine and Jack's attempt to say, yes, there's jihad and there's this, but there's also things in the Quran that actually talk about respecting one another. And where are these people? Where are the silent Muslims, the moderate Muslims? How come their voice is not being heard? So this is my kind of attempt to really kind of, I don't know, push it, show it, acknowledge it. And I think it was something that was actually very important for Jack and I. And like I explained to you guys, it happened by mistake. It was not planned. And I'm very proud and I'm very happy that we did use these quotes in the Quran, because it also says a lot about who we are who are writing this book. You know, we're not angry people writing this book. We're trying to really make a difference, you know, and to change people's perspectives and to open people's eyes. So.
Back to the Mike's place. So, how long took to Gal Gansman to reopen the bar, and how long it take, you know, to come back to certain normality after the reopening, when the people did not think about drinking their beer, did not think every hour about the blast and what's happened?
The bar opened up a week after the bombing. Of course, in Judaism we have Shiva, which is the week of mourning, where the bar was closed. Also, the bar was destroyed. You know, a lot of it had to be fixed. But the bar was closed for a week, and then we reopened it. And actually, in the film, we really get into that reopening, because it was not a good day for us. For me, it was like, you know, it's like for 1 week you're in mourning. You know, you're always in mourning, but it's like, and then it's like, there's a party, but the party it's not a party, and my friend's dead, and one of the music, you know, it's not a party, and you have to put this face on of like, and it's like, and in the film there's one character, his name is UK Dave, because everybody in Mike's place, his name is Dave, so there's Downtown Dave, and Uptown Dave, and Midtown Dave, and Diamond Dave, and Out of Town Dave. It's just like all these Daves, and he literally was the person during this week that the bar was closed, who was like the producer. Get this, get this, get this. We had a huge memorial service. The British ambassador came. It was like news and everything, and he took care of everything, and he just didn't want to think, so he took on all these tasks, and I remember seeing him in the back just crying, and there must have been about 500-600 people at Mike's place with the reopening, and he's in the back just, you know, broken, and can't relate to all this happiness, you know, and I think that was also the first time that I actually broke down was about 3 weeks after the bombing. And it's actually in the book also, not in the documentary. I was working at the bar. Gal had flown to Paris to go to Dominique's grave. So I took his shifts at night, and one night I'm sitting in the bar, and there's this guy there, and he is drinking. Again, I remember he was drinking Beck's out of the bottle, like 10. And I'm keeping my eye on him because I don't want trouble with, 10 beers. So, maybe for Czech people, it's not really, that bad. and it's Beck, so it's, you know, it's not really beer. But this guy, and I'm looking at him, and I have my eye on him because, again, I just don't want him to mess around with the. And he's totally in his own. He's no problem. And then it's like 3 o'clock in the morning, and I'm like, listen, you know, do you want me to call you a cab? And he was like, yeah, I can't drive. And I'm like, no, you shouldn't drive. And he's like, can you please call me a cab? And I was like, yeah, I'll call you a cab. And I walked him out, and as I walk him out, he says to me, were you here when the bomb went off? And I was like, yeah, I was. And he's like, you're the guy who's making the movie, you're on the news. And I was like, that's right. And he looked at me, and he says, I'm so sorry. And I said, thank you, you know. And he's like, no, I'm so sorry. And I was like, why? And he was like, because these two bastards slipped through my hands at the Allenby Bridge. And I interrogated them. And we let them go. And I just put him on the cab, and I went in the back of the bar, and that was it. I think I smoked like a pack of cigarettes in 10 minutes. And I told the cook, I'm like, you close the bar, and I just left. And he was like, I can't close the bar. I don't know how to close the bar. I just couldn't deal. And it was like very tough moment, very hard. And this guy was telling me that he quit his job, and he just he's a mess. You know, and for reasons like this is part of the reason why it was very important to write the book, because the documentary didn't touch on these things. Documentary is totally traumatic. It's any psychiatrist. Is there any psychiatrists here in the hall tonight? Okay, good. Any psychiatrist who sees this film, it's like completely like, wow, he has PTSD. He has PTSD. That's so clear. It's very clear. It's like it's so clear. And actually, people have used the film for seminars. Psychiatrists. We donated it to some institutes for post PTSD, and it's because of stories like this with this guy that I just told you. That's part of the reason why it was very important to revisit this story and put it in the format of a graphic novel, because it never would have been filmed. Yes.
Sorry, I just missed one point, but I want to clarify it. So the two Pakistanis, they flew to Gaza.
No, I'll tell you. First of all, they were British, and they were from England.
Yeah.
And they went from England to Damascus, from Damascus to Amman, to Jordan. And from Amman, they crossed. Israel and Jordan have a border, and there's a bridge called the Allenby Bridge, which is actually, is it Allenby or the Sheikh Hussein Bridge? I don't know. I don't remember which bridge it is. But they crossed the bridge into Israel, and then they went straight to Gaza. Okay, in Gaza, they were recruited or hooked up with Hamas. Okay, they revenged some guy the Israelis killed in Damascus like 6 months before, and in their suicide tape, the picture of the guy is up there and everything. But what they did is they were recruited in Gaza. They went to a memorial service of a woman named Rachel Corrie, who was an anti-war activist who was run over by an Israeli tank, and then they got into a car with an Italian journalist and went into Israel, went into Tel Aviv, but they went on a journey. They went into Gaza as aid relief workers for the Red Cross. No, there was security. Definitely. Yes. Excuse me? Okay. Where'd you live?
It was Zengel.
Okay.
And my question was, because I'm really, should I speak louder? Yeah. I'm really keen into comic books. I know that Israelis are one of the best producers or publishers, because starting with so on. I wanted to ask, what is your ambition with this book? Because I know there's Will Eisner, famous Jewish guy who actually helped South Africa, who actually through his books established something like the Pulitzer Prize, and it's the biggest award for any current.
I just learned what the Eisner Awards are like a month ago. I have no idea. I'm not from this world, you know, so.
Okay, because he is not, or he was not really too much political. He was trying to damage or destroy the boundaries between the religions and show the true view of the Judaism and why the Jews were portrayed as bad guys. He was showing his stories are really crucial in Judaism and in 20th century times. I wanted to ask if your ambition was also to submit this to the award, or what is your farther plan?
Okay.
As you said, you were trying to be impartial and show the view and side of both sides at the same time. Reference to the quotes from the Quran.
Okay, so basically, what's your name?
Bob.
Pavel?
No, Bob. My name's Bob.
So, in film you have the Academy Awards. In the graphic novel world, you have the Eisner Awards, which I just, honestly, I just found out about them like a month ago. Because some bloggers are talking about the book and they're recommending it for an Eisner, and I was like, "What the hell's an Eisner? Like, what an Eisner? Like?" So I did it. But I think what's very important about your question is you have to understand that this project was written out of distress, okay, personal distress, personal you're down on the abyss, and you're doing this for therapy. So there was no ambitions I didn't think in that aspect of, really kind of like, I know that I regarded your comment about the quotations of the Quran. Yes, maybe that, definitely. But the writing, the real process, it would never dawn to me, like, what's your message, Joshua? What do you want to do? What do you want to say? What's your audience? All I knew is that I wrote the book hoping that I can connect with youngsters, teenagers, and college, like young people. That's the only thing that I cared about. And that's what I really focused on.
If you know the house.
Yes, of course.
It was also as part of the therapy for the author.
Yeah.
He's,
sure. So
maybe that's why you're actually a good candidate for such award.
And to be honest with you, if Jack was standing here right now, he would tell you a completely different answer. And just to show you the difference between us, we didn't have the same agenda. It was like, but as you say in Arabic, inshallah, which is inshallah. Yes. Oh, I thought you answered. Please, just tell me your name. Renee.
Describe well the journey that you took from England to Mike's place. At which point, I'm sorry if I misunderstood that, but at which point where did they get the explosives from? Who supplied them the explosive?
My dear, that's the $1 million question.
Okay. Good.
That is the $1 million question. In the Sky News report, they say that the explosives came from Syria. Nobody knows where the explosives came from. The Israelis searched them when they crossed into Israel from Jordan, and of course they didn't find anything. Either they hid it really well. Jack claims, and Jack is a conspiracy theorist about everything. And, he thinks that Malcolm X actually was in the assassination of JFK and like all these kind of, but nobody knows. Nobody knows where the explosives came from. All we know about the explosives is I remember when I got to the hospital and I was checked by the doctors. The head of Ichilov Hospital, which is one of the main hospitals in Tel Aviv, bless you, said that there's chemicals in the explosives that are creating high blood pressure and heart everybody's heart rates are like going crazy. So there was some sort of chemical, but nobody knows where the explosives came from. And this attack was so rare for the time of the Second Intifada that, I mean, just like they said in the news, in the Sky News article, these were Britain's first jihad foot soldiers abroad. You know, now it's very trendy. You know, but these guys were the first guys to do it. But nobody knows where the explosives came from.
Okay. And my second question would be, if you spoke about the Mike's Place, how would it look like inside? And how many plays like this? I guess not many. It was the only one. Yeah. Was it like a cult place in Tel Aviv? So I wonder. No, I'm leading to the. Why didn't he get in? Was it normal that the bodyguard is standing at the bar in Tel Aviv?
Completely, especially at that time. Basically, what happened is that the suicide bomber had his explosives here, okay, and he tried to get in to the bar, and Avi, for whatever reason, did not let him in. And he said, not tonight. And the guy was like, well, I want to just have a beer he's like, not tonight. And the bomber, like, came up to Avi like this, and he was like, I want to get in. And there was a little bit of at the same time, I'm with the Weinsteffen, yeah, with my camera inside the place. And Avi had a little bit of a push kick. Avi apparently pushed him and kicked him. And he just realized that he's not getting in, and he just do it right here and right now. And he was standing so close to Avi that the ballistics experts explained that that's actually what saved him. Okay, not a ballistic expert, far from it, but and everybody who was behind the bomber and to the side of the bomber, including Jack and Dominique, were immediately. I remember seeing somebody on fire running, like on the street. Like it was very, but the Avi did not let them in. Had Avi let them in, could be that I wouldn't be here. And there were 120 people in the bar, and it was condensed, and it was closed. So it would have been very, very, very bad.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joshua. I think it's time to continue informally in the submarine. You are all welcome to have a glass of wine with Joshua. And in front you can buy the Mike's Place. And in Czech, of course, and I'm sure you can get his sign.
It would be my pleasure to
sign. But one more thing, please. Yeah. There is a screening of the documentary Blues by the Beach tomorrow in the National Technical Library at Davidse, and it starts at 8:15 p.m. So you are all welcome to join it.
And thank you very much. Thank you very, very, very much for having me, Roman, Yitzka. Thank you.